Rough day.
You have no idea.
Let's talk about it.
Being a woman has its advantages, but it's not an easy ride. Balancing careers, relationships, motherhood, family, and life can be quite the challenge. Sometimes you have to be a lady, and sometimes you gotta be a broad. Welcome to the Two Broads from Boca, the place where we talk about all the things you think about but don't say out loud.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Two Broads from Boca. Good evening. I am Amy Schreiber, and this is my lovely co-host.
Lorianne Gary.
There she is. And tonight we are going to be speaking to the very handsome Tyler. He is.
We have a financial expert on
It's a little bit of an eye candy, just saying.
This is Tyler Vernon, and he is with Biltmore Capital Advisors. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here.
It's great to have you here.
So we've been talking to Tyler for a while, and he finally agreed to come on the show, and we're so thrilled to have him. And the reason is myself, I'm not speaking for Amy over there, but I am terrible at finances.
Gee,
I
I would have
admit
never
it.
guessed.
I admit it. Hello, my name is Lorianne, and I'm terrible at finances. I do not know what the word budget means. I mean, I think I know what it means, but I don't think I really know how to do it.
I think you can define it.
Is your husband listening to this?
I'm sure he is. He's
And
probably
there he
going,
is.
teacher.
Yeah.
So because finances are such a broad topic, Tyler is going to help us do Finance 101 at the basic level.
Very basic, apparently so. No, but there are a lot of questions that we want to ask you, particularly about how does one do a budget? Like, how do you do a budget? Because people don't know how. They, I remember being a single girl and trying to budget, trying really hard. There were weeks that I had to choose between feeding the cat, feeding me, or doing the dry cleaning.
Yeah.
So it's hard. So how do you do that? And I want to apologize to everyone about my hair this evening. Just saying. Go ahead.
Oh, I think it looks great.
He's cute.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to realize you have to understand the importance of the budget. I think a lot of people really want to do it, but they want to do it, and then a month goes by, and they still want to do it, and then 6 months go by, then a year go by, and then it's our New Year's resolution to do the budget again, and that's what we talked about last year. So I think just the importance of the budget, I think, is really important, because so many people, I think, go throughout life and they spend and they spend and they spend, and then next thing you know, they wake up one time and all of a sudden retirement starts to be real, and it's maybe 10 years away, and you realize, oh my gosh, what have I done to get ready for that? So anything, it's well documented that anything that's tracked is you execute better on, whether that's goals at work or goals at home. So I think it's important to understand that, because that's really what the budget is for, right? It's to track your progress towards a longer term goal of, all right, I'm going to be, and it's really meant to track what you can save and what you can put away. So I think it's just important to understand why it's so important, because tracking a plan, and I guess we'll probably talk about that later, but how much are you really putting away, and is it enough or is it not enough? I mean, that's a whole nother question.
Well, how do you know what's enough?
Well,
That's a good question.
Like,
So-
let's say, for example, you get your paycheck.
Yep.
Is there a certain amount you should be taking
Immediately
out
off the
of
top.
your
Okay,
paycheck?
that's a great question, and I'll definitely get back to the budget question.
All right.
Okay, so first of all, if somebody's working for a large organization, they should at least do enough where they get some kind of match, right? Because that's free money. A lot of larger employers, Fortune 500 companies, and even smaller employers, they give a match. Say, if you contribute 3% of your paycheck, we will match that 3%. So it's like free money.
That's right,
If you
yeah.
don't do that, you're throwing away money that could be handed to you. So from a high level standpoint, people should at least call their HR company, call whoever is in charge of that at their work and understand, well, how much do I put in? How much will you match me? And I mean, that's a great starting point. But really, the first thing before the budget, well, the budget can be done. But you asked how much is enough to be putting away. Well, there's a lot of factors. How much is coming in? How much is it to feed your kids, right?
Apparently not enough.
Well, there's
Right,
expenses that are
That's the problem.
they're discretionary, like going out on the town. Then there's things that to turn the electric on and to do things
Right.
that are
The necessities.
or
Right.
necessities. So first understanding what the necessities are, and like extra makeup or going out isn't necessarily a necessity, although right to some it may be, but dividing those down to what's the most important, and then cutting back as much as possible on those. I mean, you don't want to be eating popcorn and tuna fish every day, right?
Right.
So you need to find the balance, and once you find that balance on paper, it's really putting money away first, and then living on what's left second. I think a lot of people get that turned around. They
Yes.
spend money first,
That's
and then
what I'm
whatever's
doing.
left over, which generally isn't much.
Guilty. So you got to take it right off the top.
You got it.
You gotta
That's the
pretend like
only
it's
way
not
it
even
works.
there.
That's the only way it works. And we normally advise people to get that set up automatically, where it automatically gets sent to a savings account, because if
Yeah,
it's
I would
in the
never do
checking
it.
account,
You're spending
it's
it.
spent.
Yeah.
It's done. I mean, 90% of people,
Okay,
that's
so
what happens.
Key. Take it out automatically. That's a good.
But
tip.
really, the budget is accounting for everything. And I actually just brought an example of one, because a lot of people don't realize all these little
Taking notes.
things. But looking at things like, again, if you're working, obviously all your salaries, and unfortunately most people don't have a portfolio of income or a trust funds. I mean, that's
Not if
nice.
they have kids, they don't.
No.
Let me just tell you that.
But trying to understand that credit card statement, going through each thing, and really what's important, and what's what was the food bills, and what are the the mortgage bills and the food bills and those important things, and what was going out at night and doing those discretionary items.
I live
Well, you
like
also
a
have
monk.
to have like a little section in there for what they say is like a rainy day, like all of a sudden you blew a tire out, or the holidays right now, Christmas shopping. How that's got to be in that yearly budget.
Well, I
right?
mean, most people, I think 3 months worth of living expenses is good to have in cash, although a lot of people probably don't have that. But in case somebody loses a job, or there's an emergency, or your roof goes, I mean, you have
So
to have
3
some
months.
buffer.
Okay.
3 to 6 months. I'd say 3 at a minimum, or at least a way or credit line somewhere to get that. But normally 3 to 6 months in cash is a good starting point for somebody, and that's what the financial planning books tell us.
Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of things. I mean, getting back to what's enough, it's just so different for everybody. And but again, understanding those basic, living needs, and especially if somebody just got divorced or there's a major life change or widowed. I mean, the bottom line is the same amount of money now has to support 2 lives. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, major decisions have to be made about potential downsizing, and these aren't fun decisions to have. Can I afford this? Can I afford to continue to be in this house with this mortgage
Sadly,
payment?
though, a lot of people don't. They live above their means.
Yeah.
Whether it's
Well,
whether
especially
you're making
in and around this
$30,000 a year, or $300,000 a year or more. People like to live outside their
Yep.
means. They don't.
And the credit cards, I mean,
I
that
was
needs
just
to
about
stop.
to say, when you're charging, you're not realizing, because it's
It's
not
like Monopoly money.
Yes,
It's like,
it's
it's
just
Monopoly
keep
money.
charging it
See,
away,
that's
and you
why-
have no idea what you're
it
spending until the
starts
statement comes
when you're
in.
young. When kids do the
Yeah.
debit card, when parents send them the debit card,
Well, and
it's
you
like
can
they
get
think
'em.
it's magic that comes out, and the money's just going to keep coming out.
Yeah.
They don't realize to subtract what they're taking out. That's why
I did that
tend
my
to.
first month in
Did you
college.
really? Oh,
Yeah.
how cute you are.
I know.
I pay
Listen.
everything with my debit card.
Yeah.
I do not like to put anything on
Well,
the credit
that's
card.
great. For people that can't handle the credit card, I think a debit card makes
Let me
sense.
tell you why. Because I was involved with somebody years and years ago that I was engaged to, and he decided to take out a credit card in my name and not tell me.
Oh,
and
what a gem.
then, yeah, he was the gem. And
wow.
then he took the money that I worked for and said, he's like, we're getting married. You should put it in a joint account. We didn't need to talk about that. So idiot did.
Wow.
And then he went away. He took all the money out and went away.
Nice guy.
And went and bought a house with another woman.
Oh my
It was a
God.
good time. I was so young. I was 26.
It's terrible. I hope
Yeah, but
karma
you know-
got him. Did karma get him?
I don't think so, but it will.
It will.
I will.
No, but I'm just saying that's a real life story, and those things happen to
Oh
people.
yeah.
And fortunately, I am in a profession where I'm always going to have a job because people are always going to be sick. And I was able to. It took me a long time. It took me 6 years to get on my feet again. But when you have 2 kids,
Yeah.
and you're working and you're not able to make ends meet, that's a frightening
Yeah.
prospect. That I had a friend whose husband decided the marriage was over, and he cleaned out all the accounts and the children's accounts and just left.
Well, that's, I think, illegal. I mean, at least,
Yeah, but it took a long time with
I know,
lots of legal
trying to get it
fees
back is
to get it
the
back.
problem.
So those things happen. So I think, particularly anybody, and not just women, but obviously we're going to talk about women because we're the 2 broads. You have to be cognizant of what's going
Yeah.
on.
Well, I also think as a family goes through this, look, this is what an unbelievable exercise to bring the kids through. I mean, not only to teach the children, but to really realize, especially in this town, look, this is how much is going in. This is what's going out. You continue to ask for the new shoes, the new iPhone, the new this and the that. Look, it's not a money of trees, and not only that, but we have to
Apparently,
save
though,
for
they
us
think it is.
and retirement and school. So I think this really can be an interesting family exercise if done right to be educational for
I
everybody.
like that.
I like that idea
I'm
too,
going to
because
do
they
that
really
this
have
weekend.
no concept of money.
No.
Yeah.
Even
It's
if
only
it's
And-
$40.
$10.
Well, and there was another
$30.
interesting thing,
You could tell we have teenagers.
Yeah,
We
I
both
hate
said
Yeah.
it at the same time.
I want to stab them.
and this may be a little far-fetched, but for some families it might be an interesting thing where they actually took their paycheck and cashed it in real dollars, because it's different when you just start writing numbers around, but actually cash them in dollars and looked at the bills and made separate buckets with actual cash to get it pushed
sure.
around. It makes it a lot more physical and
bank
real.
will do that.
And yeah, the bank will do that. And look, this is what gets taken away for. This is what we left after health care and these sort of things. And here are all the bills.
Tuition.
And what's really left at the end of the day. And
It's
it's
like
$3 and a postage
Cents.
stamp.
yeah.
Cents.
But remember,
Yeah,
remember
that's-
when you first graduated school or high school or whatever it is, and you thought about, wow, I'm gonna make this amount of money and I'll be happy. And for a lot of people, they hit that, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, that didn't go that far. Then they go higher and higher and higher for a lot of people, and they just bring on more and more responsibilities and more complication in life. And then all
The
of a
more
sudden,
money we come upon, the more problems we
More
see.
money. More
Yeah.
More
problems.
money.
and the more stress. So
Yeah.
and it ends up that they don't really save. People
No,
are
because
generally no happier.
I think the
Maybe
more you
there's-
make, the more you spend.
Yeah, and it creates more complications. There's been some studies done that show an ideal. People that make, 60,000 are no happier than people that are make, 300,000. But maybe if you're making 5 million, then you're happy. I don't know.
It's never enough. no.
Baby.
But I'm serious. We have a very varied audience, and we have a lot of single moms out there.
Yeah.
And they're working a regular 9 to 5, and they got 2 kids, and they're trying to make ends meet. So I think that this makes a lot of sense to sit down and write it down, and take off from the top. But what if they really can't?
Well, I mean, you can only do what you can do, and I mean, if the pie is only so big and you're taking 95% of the pie, you can you can work longer hours or cut back in other ways. But I mean, there's only so much there. But most people would be surprised that you can cut back in certain ways, whether it's changing a cell phone plan. Maybe you have more data than you're using, or by taking the time to actually shop those things out, or maybe you don't need the special cable package that you've had just because you've had for so long. So I really think if anybody goes through and takes a look at that, or they start streaming on Netflix instead of the regular cable package, there's normally some money that we can all find. somewhere.
Now, do you do that as well? Do you help, or do you have people that help people to figure out how they can streamline?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is normally sitting down together. We had, unfortunately, a widow. Her husband passed away, and he paid all the bills, and she was getting all these things that were coming in, and we had her just put everything in her sink. She had a big sink, and we just said, throw all that mail in the sink, all your bills, and we'll come at the end of the month. We went through each thing, and we tried to figure out, okay, is this an expense that we need to continue or not? And we set everything up on auto pay with her accounts. We want to make sure that the money's there. And just getting a different perspective, even with a good friend, to sit down and say, all right, here's what's going on. Somebody that you can be,
I'll budget you. I can do
Yeah.
a budget for you.
and to
Well,
say
yeah,
like,
a
hey, this
different
is
set of
stupid.
eyes,
You're
like,
spending
yeah,
this
you're
amount on
spending-
nails
exactly.
every week, or it's hey,
Or
you know,
hair,
or
even.
we can cut that down. I think it can be done over a few glasses of wine with friends. I mean, again, but
Well, that's right up
having the
your
right
alley.
relationship.
Yes, it is.
But this is real
I'm not getting
personal
much of a
stuff.
budget. I'm picking her up off the floor. No, but it's true. You know, it's funny because my sister constantly calls me. She's like, "Help me with my budget." So I made her save everything, every receipt for a whole month, and I put her on a budget. She did it for like a week, and then she was like, "I can't do this," you know. And it's but I said that's how you have to live.
Yeah.
You know you have to do that.
Well, and certain credit cards can give alerts if you go above a certain amount or a certain size. So I know that certain credit cards give you that ability where they'll send you an email if you go over, you know, your limit. But, you know, it's all about us keeping track of it, and that's difficult. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, technology's made it easy where you have an app on your phone, you click it, you can look at your balance, and
And cry.
And cry.
yeah. But,
What do you think about credit cards that you have to pay off at the end of the month? Good, bad?
I think it's
versus
good
an
because,
open-ended?
no, I think it's good because it keeps you disciplined.
I agree.
And
Right.
honestly, for a lot of your viewers that might have some of this issue, like what you've done, the debit card, I mean, it forces you to not, you know,
Cash
go in.
only.
And I mean, you need, a lot of people need to do that. And maybe there's an emergency card that's kept in a safe, and you know, the three people
no
have
one
to
has the
agree.
combo.
Yeah, I mean, three people have to turn the key at the same time, like our nuclear system here.
Exactly.
See
But,
Amy with the blowtorch and the thing trying to open it up. No, but I think it's true. I do that. I take them out of my wallet.
Yeah.
You know, I'll keep one in the car.
Well, it's
like
easy,
under the
especially
mat.
late night on a Saturday night.
Right.
You know, after
No, you
5
don't know us.
cocktails.
We don't go.
Mhm.
But we don't. we don't
HSN,
even
what
do
is
that.
it? I'm
Yeah,
fucking
exactly.
going.
No, but it's true. People have to understand. You can't. Sometimes you just can't. Like, I have kids who are in very expensive sports.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of time and travel and money. So, you know, we don't go out.
Yeah.
We just play baseball.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you've consciously made some of those decisions, but a lot of people make those decisions without understanding the impact. For example, all right, what happens if we do these things for the kids? I mean, right? We all want to give their kids everything.
Of course,
Um,
right.
But what does that mean? What does it mean how does it impact my long-term planning if I live in this big house, or if I downsize, or if I spend all this money on the kids that maybe they don't necessarily have to? So, you know, unfortunately, there's a lot of planning that goes into that. I think for some people, just riding the ship and not spending more than they're bringing in is important. But once a good amount of money starts coming in, I mean, the planning is really a plan to talk to a professional and figure out, well, how much is
Yes.
enough.
And stick to it.
Yeah, and how do they save, right? I mean, there's so many different kinds of accounts, and
It is.
you know, IRAs and 401ks and Roth IRAs and traditional IRAs and taxable accounts and 529 plans, and
Well,
I mean,
that's a lot of things
it's like
too.
mumbo jumbo to
When
a
you
lot of
have
people.
children, you know,
Well,
here
you
in
go
Florida
for-
we have the Florida prepaid thing.
Hmm.
But some people didn't do that, you know, and they do that 529 thing. And I think, you know, that's something that comes.
It's the thing, it's the
It's a
thing.
thing. It's a thing. But that comes right off the top. That goes into those accounts with that you don't even see that money.
Yeah, and that's a lot of people don't realize that. For example, 529 plan. I mean, taxes are a saver's one of their worst enemies. Taxes and fees from like people that invest money, and those are the worst two things for people. So, the government has come up with things like the 529 plan, which if you invest for college, you never have to pay any tax. So it grows tax-free. You can take money out tax-free. And if you put money away when the child is 1 or 2 years old and they're not going to take it out until 18, that money could easily double or triple over that period of time and save
And pay for 1
tens
year
of
of college.
Well, yeah, depending on how much money can go away.
Than
No, I
nothing,
agree.
though. I mean,
And
at
that
least
shouldn't
you're-
be, there's a lot of changes with tax law and what's going to happen next year, and they're not really looking to touch any of these things that are so important to people
That's
to
good.
help save.
That's good. That's helpful.
Well, you know what I find interesting about finances in general is like if you have a medical question or an issue, you go to a medical healthcare provider,
Yeah.
to Amy, and you ask and you get advice and you find out what's wrong. A lot of people do not go to a financial advisor because they think they can figure it out.
Well, not only that, but
On
it's
their own.
insurance doesn't pay for it. It's an out-of-pocket, you have to spend that money to get the advice. And
But I think it's good for long term, at
Yeah, I
least
think
to
you
get
know.
you on your track. Because how often do you
Buy
feel,
once, cry once. That's my theory. You know what I
you
mean?
should
Do
revisit
the right thing.
because plans change.
Yeah.
Your job changes, your relationship changes, so you should be revisiting these plans every.
100%. Well, you should look at them, at least the big picture planning every year. Am I really on track? And where are we? And a lot of people don't know where to go. I mean,
So explain to our listeners exactly what you do.
yeah.
What your. Do you do this all?
Okay.
I don't know. He's just so cute.
Well, I'm
So-
sure he does a lot, but give us.
Yeah,
an
I mean, what I do
overall-
for work.
Yes. Yes,
Don't
Amy.
tell them afterwards.
So-
Everybody will
That's a
know our
different show
business.
altogether.
So what I do, well, first of all, I run a firm called Biltmore Capital. We're down here in Boca, and also have an office in Princeton, New Jersey. And we run money, meaning we understand what somebody's looking to do, what their tax brackets are, the amount of risk that they're looking to take, and we customize portfolios to grow over time to help save for retirement and college in the most tax-effective ways. But the big part of what we do is the planning, is figure out, okay, God forbid somebody passes away or somebody gets divorced and they sit there and they feel so overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, there's a mortgage and I never had to worry about. Some people didn't have to worry about these
Right.
things. Other women, ruled the roost with it, right?
I'm a rule rooster.
But so where do you start and what do you do? And there's so
Right.
many different decisions from, the estate planning, your wills and things like that to what to do
That's
with the
another
money.
thing.
Yeah, what
Estate
to do with the
planning,
money. And am I in the right house? Is it too big or too small? What should my budget look like? How should I be saving in your IRAs, 401ks, taxable accounts? How much life insurance should I have? Should I have life insurance? What about my older parents that don't have anything that I'm going to end up being taken care of? And all these things. What about insurance? Should my son be on my insurance policy? How do I make sure if he doesn't crash into somebody that I get sued? I mean, there's literally a year's worth long of
No,
subjects.
and that you bring up a good point because your budget completely gets blown away when you have a 16-year-old
Yep.
on
car
your
insurance, right?
Yeah.
Like literally
crazy.
doubled overnight.
This is why we're all stressed people, and this is why the divorce.
This is why
rate
my
is so
hair looks
high.
like this. Today. This is it. No, I mean,
but
it's
in finding
daunting.
somebody to work through those things, I mean, I think there's a certain amount where they should be able to get through it, but once somebody starts to accumulate some assets, there's more at risk, right? People do crazy stuff. They will, they say they burned themselves at Starbucks because the coffee was hot and try to sue Starbucks, right? They
works
did it
for
at
me.
Burger King. And now it says this coffee is
It's
hot.
hot.
Like,
Exactly.
really? It's hot?
Get out of here. No, I know. That luck has never shown on me. But I understand what you're saying. Like people, even people that fall into money for they
Fall
don't.
into it.
Yeah, they just fall. They had a little wine and they fell into money. No, but like they don't know what to do with it,
Well,
and they wind up
athletes,
spending
I
it.
tell you, a big problem
Exactly.
is lottery winners. And I mean, these are good problems to have, right? I mean, these are
Say
great
people
problems
Come
to
out of
have.
the woodwork.
But if you look at most sports, famous sports people, basketball players, baseball players, football players, or people that won the lottery, normally they go through their money because everybody asks them for a favor, or
sure.
hey, I have this great
Everybody's your
investment idea,
friend.
and
Oops.
and on top of that, there's bad decisions that are made, and they're being called by everybody and their brother, and there's a lot of shysters in our business, and it's a problem. I mean, we're in the land of Bernie Madoff, and there's a lot of smaller Bernies that have been around.
It's scary. It's scary. People, people will trust you. People come up to me on the street and they'll be like, "Can you look at this?" But they won't go to you for money because they're afraid you're going to swindle them out of money.
And there's different standards of advisors out there. There's people that are legal fiduciaries that have to do the right thing by law. Then there's other types of advisors, because everybody is a financial advisor, right? There's just and there's other advisors that have the obligation to give people advice, but aren't necessarily held to the same level of fiduciary responsibility. And if you don't operate in our world, a lot of people don't understand how to navigate that world. And you could get somebody that puts you in some mutual fund and takes a huge commission and never talks to you again. But then there are advisors who charge a fee, and they have to, by law, do what's in the client best interest. And if they don't, they could be sued, and they could have serious regulatory problems.
So Tyler, to tell all of us, because I'm even curious now, that brought up a good question for me, is how do you go about finding someone to help you? The best places you should go, because just going on Google and saying I need help with my money and all of these things are going to come up.
Well, it's funny how many people do it that way.
Of course they do.
We actually bring in, we get calls every day from somebody on Google that found us, we help people with lending or with loans and other things, and we get calls every day from that.
Wow.
But I know I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. I'm just surprised with the amount of people who will pick up the phone and tell somebody how much money they have and send statements to them over email without even it's amazing in this day of age.
Wow.
What happens.
Very scary.
But I think the advice of somebody who's been successful is important. Generally somebody in any family, there's a family matriarch or patriarch or somebody who has done well, that they could be a grandfather or grandmother, an aunt or an uncle, or a niece or a nephew, but normally there's, in somebody's sphere of influence, there's somebody who they can trust and who's been successful in their own right with finances. And it's important because to get really good quality advice, there's some basic things, but to really get the hand-holding, it can be expensive. And unless it's good to be able to leverage a relationship. If there's an uncle who we know is successful and he's got money with a certain firm, if that uncle says, hey, my niece just went through a divorce, she has some issues, most firms would help that woman as a favor, as just a family relationship.
Okay.
So I think, first of all, that's good to get advice from somebody who they know and trust, who's done well on their own, and who's already done some of that due diligence. Okay. The second thing is to really ask certain questions, like in our business there are people that work for a lot of the bigger firms, like the Merrill Lynches and the Morgan Stanleys, and there's a great firms, by the way. And then there's what's called a registered investment advisor, not to be too technical, but
Otherwise, we're going to lose me.
yeah, but
It's like speaking in tongues.
but the registered investment advisor is not able to take commissions, and they have a responsibility to make sure that their clients are getting the lowest fees and the best advice.
Okay.
And they can do a lot of this planning that you're not going to find at some of these other organizations. And so I think asking questions like, how are you compensated? Can you take commissions? What can I expect in the relationship? I've never heard, nobody's asked me that in my time that I've been in this industry. What can I expect? Maybe a couple people in the first year. What do we cover? Because some people might think financial planning is investing money, and other people might really think, all right, we're going to sit down and do budgeting. We're going to look at your property and casualty insurance, and we're going to look at your mortgage. To me, that's planning.
Yeah.
Taking your money and investing it somewhere. That's one piece of the pie.
Yeah.
But
And I don't want to have someone and then not talk to them for
No,
a year.
I
Well,
want to
that-
be friends with this person.
Well, that should be
Well,
another
you want
question.
to develop
track.
a relationship
Right.
so you have that trust.
Well, that
there
is so
and-
important, and having somebody that can spend the time to do that, and sometimes it's an emotional thing. I mean, it's especially we work with a lot of divorced women, and I mean that's a very emotional time. And now they got to deal with all this stuff, and some people don't even know what this stuff is.
So you're a
And
psychologist too. on
well,
top
it
of that.
really is. I mean,
well, it
we'll-
is. It all goes
No, it's
together.
true. Though. I mean,
And-
this is a very stressful thing.
And somebody that you can call and say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. Somebody who can be responsive, who can take the time, and who can hold that person's hand through that difficult process.
I think that's a very.
Yeah.
But not only that, but maybe they don't know the answers, but they can bring in the experts when it comes to getting the mortgage or life insurance or your car insurance and property and casualty insurance and your investments, and bring it and your estate planning and wills, and somebody that can bring that all together in a plan, and not
Right.
just operate, hey, I'm going to invest your money, you got to figure everything else out.
Yeah, no, that's no.
So
not
much
working for me.
information.
It's
This is
so much.
You
It
have
is.
to.
It's
Will you come back?
overwhelming.
Because you have to come back.
Yeah.
And do. He's going to be a new friend of the show and a friend of Dr. Schreiman. But I think it's important because honestly, there's so much to cover.
Yeah,
And
this is
it's-
very, very broad.
This is like the
topic.
tip of the iceberg. Very broad.
But
topic.
Broad,
It's-
right?
It's a
There's
broad
broads.
topic.
The
That's
broad
right.
topic for the broad.
But
No,
it
but I
is-
think
it's the baseline for everything.
But I think it would be
mean,
really smart if you came on and
that's
gave
what
us
we're
tips
working
every
on.
couple of weeks and like.
Yeah,
You know.
we could figure something else
But
out.
if you have questions for Tyler, please feel free to reach out, leave
And-
comments below.
and you
If
can
we
tell-
don't
Tyler's-
answer it before the show ends, we absolutely will get the
We will.
comments to
But
Tyler
you
and
need to
he will
tell
answer
people how
them.
they can get in touch with you.
Yes.
Oh, well, you can Google me. And in our office, actually, we still have I don't even know what our local number is, but I do know our
Your
Princeton
website,
number,
maybe?
which
Oh, okay,
gets
go
to
ahead.
us, but that's 609-688-8701. And our website is just builtmorecap.com, www.builtmorecap.com. And there is a section, if you put in chandelier program, we're still working with our marketing people to see how that actually sounds. You can send some comments here, but the chandelier program is a program that we've set up for divorced and widowed individuals that bring them through this process. So,
We have a
that's
question.
fantastic.
Eric Booker says no load mutual funds and annuities with a question mark. I don't know
Okay.
what that means.
all right, so no load mutual funds and annuities. So I think the question is probably, are these good? Is this something we should be looking at? And I'll give a general answer, but one answer is that each person's scenario is just so different, right? Like a mutual fund can be a stock mutual fund, a bond mutual fund. A mutual fund is just an instrument that somebody can invest in. And this fund can own stocks in the stock market. It can own bonds. It can own international commodity. I mean, it can own all these things. So just a mutual fund, it's sort of like, hey, should I buy a house? Well, I don't know. Is a house on the water? Is it in Florida? Is it in New Jersey? Is it overpriced or underpriced? So mutual funds in general, it's a no load mutual funds. I think in general they're right, but they need to be customized to the individual. And annuities are generally used for very conservative people. Fees are generally high with annuities. An annuity is basically a place to invest money where you can grow it, but the annuity company, like MetLife or Lincoln Financial, they give certain guarantees.
Okay.
So you're paying extra, you're paying insurance for some of these guarantees. So they're generally a higher cost product, but for some people that makes sense, and that's why it's difficult.
Okay.
And not all money in general, our rule of thumb is if you do like annuities, no more than 25% of somebody's money should go into annuities, because there's penalties to get out. They're not very liquid, and there's some problems associated with some of them. But I think they can be used for a piece of the pie.
Okay.
Very cool.
All
Very
right.
cool.
Good.
We have a lot of stuff to cover. You have to come back because my head is spinning right now.
I know it's dizzy.
Well, do you want to talk about some of the sort of estate planning things that are important?
I think we should go back to the budget.
Okay.
I think people really want to understand that,
Okay.
Lorianne.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, we could talk forever about budgets.
I know.
I mean, the bottom line is the budget is especially, I mean, if somebody's retired, well, it's important really for everybody. But I think understanding, again, all these different pieces. So the first thing is really how much needs to go away to savings. And that's a whole nother conversation, really, how much is enough. And there's a rule of thumb, you know, at different ages, how much you should have saved. So, for example, when you're 40, you should have, what is it, 2 to 4 times your annual salary should be saved.
Apparently
I believe it's
these
actually
people have no children.
yeah. And when you're 50, you know, you should have 4 to 6 times saved.
Did I tell you I was the truth fairy?
I hope no children are watching.
That's hard. When
Well,
you have
that's a lot.
children.
And
Yeah.
one of the issues is people are living longer and longer with all these advances in medical. I mean, it's not like,
I could
you
take
know,
care
100
of that.
years ago you died at 45 or 50.
Right.
So,
True.
you know, and it was,
Now you
yeah.
only hope you die at 40.
Yeah.
Nice.
And now the average, I mean, for men it's 85, and that's a long time.
Yes.
And so, but people are still used to retiring at a certain age, but yet their money has to go for so much
You
longer.
know what irritates me when I talk to my husband? I'm like, you know, what are we going to do when you retire? And he's like, I'm never going to retire. And I'm like, why? He's like, we have 2 children, you know, and I understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
You know, whatever issues that come up,
Yeah.
it's hard. So I don't like when people say that, though. I think it's silly to say because you can't work until.
Well, there's only so many levers that can be pulled. There's X amount of money that's coming in, and there's X amount going out, and then there's whatever's left. So that whatever's left is what needs to go in savings to make sure there's more down the road.
Yeah.
So I think at least giving people the ability to make a conscious decision to say, look, here's your baseline plan, and this is what an advisor does. They put things into some technology, and it shows, okay, if I'm spending this with inflation, right, what every year I'm going to be spending a little bit more. Here's what's going away. Here's what Social Security is. Here's my taxes. All these different things going in and out. But yeah, I know this. I know.
This is sin.
But some people just decide, hey, I'm going to work a much longer period of time to be able to provide my family with a lifestyle
But you
that I
could
can
say
today.
that, and then you walk out and you get hit by the bus.
Well,
You know,
that's
it's
why
number
life
42.
insurance. That's
true.
why that's so important. And so many people out there, unfortunately, I mean, for a lot of your women viewers who are married, I would say, look, what are some of the things you can do? Ask your husband how much life insurance he has. There's so many
Not
people.
enough, no.
We've had husbands. I mean, who thinks that anything's going to happen, right?
Yeah, of
Nobody
course, you hope
thinks
not.
generally, unless something happens to a loved one that's close.
Right.
We don't realize that until it happens. So, but we've had so many issues where people, you know, the husband gets something happens, and all of a sudden, you know, the wife is left with a couple children and no life insurance or savings, and that's. I mean,
Devastating.
It
it's
is
it's
devastating.
irresponsible. It's irresponsible.
Eric
And-
wants to know what's the cost ratio of kids at home to kids in boarding school. I think that was meant to be a joke.
Yeah. It's
have
it's not
kids.
good.
Yeah, it's not. Don't
Or
have,
public
the
school.
lesson, the moral of
Story.
this story today is don't have kids. Plants and pets.
Plants.
That's it. Plants
Fish
and
are
pets.
good.
I don't know.
Fish
Pets
are
aren't
low
that
maintenance.
cheap. I have to be
No,
honest
fish
with
is
you.
good.
Yeah.
You flush them and that's move
I
on
know.
to the story.
I travel a lot, so I have low maintenance pets.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Very nice.
I'll be his pet. Oh,
Aw,
cute. I'm
Amy.
very low
Okay, Amy.
maintenance. I am. I'm very low maintenance.
All right. Well, I think.
Yeah, we have to have him come
this
back.
is-
'Cause I got a
yeah,
headache.
this
I'm like
was-
freaking
Really, that
out.
much time has went by?
We have been
Yeah.
yapping about this for 38
Okay.
minutes. Can
Wow.
you imagine?
Wow.
Wow.
You're quite the success, sir.
Again, if you have other questions about anything that we talked about tonight or something you want to know about, please leave comments below and
Yes.
we will be sure
We
to get
always
them
answer
to
because
Tyler.
we're those kind of gals.
And we're going to kind of switch gears right now.
Just for a
Do
moment.
you mind talking turkey?
No, I love turkey.
Yay, because I
love
love
turkey.
Thanksgiving. I think it's the best.
She
One of
only
the
likes
best
it 'cause it's
holidays. I love
November.
Christmas too.
I have
but-
to say, someone's birthday's coming in this room. Someone's birthday's coming. I don't know who it is. I'm very sad. I bought
I
her
was
a little.
born on Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
I was
she
a
was.
turkey baby.
Wow.
So my birthday is next Saturday, the 25th.
Yes.
So
What
it
are you
doesn't
doing?
fall
What was
on
9 months
Thanksgiving this
before
year.
Thanksgiving? Is there any special anything?
Oh yeah, what is that?
No?
We gotta back
Was there
up. You're the
anything?
math guy.
I don't know. I mean, if it was 9
Subtract
months
9
after,
months.
I'd say, hey, that
Well-
was a Thanksgiving,
Right.
date.
This is 11. This is the 11th one, so it wasn't. You weren't. The New Year.
Nothing. I don't think.
What
there's
were
anything
you
good.
doing, Mrs. LaSalle? Come on. sister.
Spill it.
But no, seriously. So what are you doing for your birthday?
So, well, now I'm talking Thanksgiving and you're
Yeah.
talking to my birthday.
Well, because I had to, because it's Thanksgiving-ish.
Ish, I know. Well, my son's the next day, so my birthday kind of gets, it's all about him
Put
now.
to the
It's gonna be
wayside.
16, the 26th.
Good times.
Good
I have
time.
one already.
Speaking of that car insurance. But anyways, we are now having Thanksgiving dinner at our house because we are no longer going to New York. So I got thrown into it, and now I have to plan. You're having like 1,000
I'm
people.
having everyone in the world come to
and-
our house. You're more
Is
than
it
welcome.
catered or are you cooking?
No, I do all
Oh,
the
she
cooking.
cooks.
Really?
Like
Well, you're
a
Italian.
I
maniac.
am,
All right, that makes sense.
and I wear it well. No, yeah, my bird is already in the refrigerator defrosting because it's 25
Yes,
pounds.
ours are too.
It's terrible.
That's Peter's.
We
job.
have
He
a
handles all that.
30 something pound turkey.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
Where did you get that? Was a turkey on steroids?
Yeah,
Yep,
major.
yep. I mean, they're hard to find.
Yes, they
They're hard to
are.
find, these
Did
turkeys.
you get that up north?
No,
No,
you
it was
shot
down
it in
here
Boca
somewhere.
Raton.
I actually didn't. I didn't get
You
it.
were
My
not shot.
girlfriend's mother, who's Italian, is cooking turkey.
See?
Oh, nice.
All the vowels, we do the right thing.
How many people
Yeah.
are you having for a 30?
14.
Oh,
But
that's
you
what
want
I'm having.
leftovers. You want leftovers. And there's a ham.
Me
but-
too. I'm making ham tea.
But she, I mean, I'm surprised she didn't push. Last year she made a lot of different things, but this year I told her she can make the turkey, and I want everything catered. So all the sides are being catered, and that's hard to tell an Italian
Look at
who
Tyler
cooks
here.
everything,
He's
right?
definitely
honey,
the guy.
you can come
But
to
I just
my
don't
house
want the stress.
anytime you want.
I don't want the stress of the kitchen, and
It's
you
such
know,
a
it's
mess, I
and they
know.
can't enjoy. It's hard to really enjoy the holiday. If you
It
want a
is.
good excuse to be away from your family, that's great, and cook and all. But if you really want to
Yeah,
enjoy the
sure.
holiday, it's hard when you do all
Actually,
that stuff.
this is an easy holiday for me because there's no pasta involved.
Yeah,
because
it's
the
easier to
Pilgrims
cook
did not
for this
eat
one
the
than it is for
pasta.
Italian. I agree
So,
with you.
so I used to tell my mother, but did they eat broccoli rabe, Mom? And she used to tell me, shut up. But so it's not bad, but it's a lot. But
Yeah.
it's less than Christmas, so it's okay. Like Christmas
Oh, it's
is
a lot
over
less,
40,
Yeah.
and it's a lot
That's a
of
lot.
yeah, it's a lot of there's a lot of flesh being cooked in there.
And I don't think around here people fry their turkey, right? That's
Well,
probably
we
not
fry
big.
one.
You did?
She,
We
fry,
do
she
one-
fries. I'm afraid I'm gonna go
Yeah,
on
but no,
fire.
it's because it's so good.
It's
And
anything
that's
it's
always
fried, of
gone.
course.
I
It's
know.
great.
But
It's
I'm
fried.
afraid
Fantastic.
that I'm gonna go on fire. I am.
You gotta do it outside.
I love that
Honey,
New
I
York
would have
accent.
to do it out in somebody else's
I'm
lawn.
not doing
I'm
it.
so
I
afraid.
stay inside.
Okay, who
I'm
do I
just gonna
have?
make
There's she's knocking them back. She's brining the turkey.
That's exactly.
No
it.
one's home. It's me because Noah's working.
Yeah, no.
So
then you
I
don't
have
need
to,
do
and
that.
my sons, they'd be like, "Is it ready yet?" I'm not getting any help there. And could you see
Yeah,
me? I'm 5'2". I look like a gnome. I'm sitting on books. That's why I have height now. And could you see me
You revealed the
taking
secret.
this turkey out by myself,
No, you could get
drenched
hurt.
in
Yeah.
oil, burnt to death in
No.
the emergency room? It would be
No.
not pretty, so.
It can be. I mean,
It's a
people light up
hazard.
people do it in their garages.
I know.
And I understand.
I
Very
get
It
take
rained.
care of
It
those
rained
people.
one time, and when you have water coming down on hot oil,
Never good.
it's a problem.
Yeah,
And
Yes.
it's never good.
yeah.
Never
So,
good.
I've been doing a Thanksgiving hack every week, and I have two since
Drink a
Thursday,
lot of wine while you're
Thanksgiving.
cooking.
Well, I already did that one. No, but this one is really cool. You know how when you want to make corn on the cob and you have all these pots and they take up so much room on your stove and everything?
What are you doing here?
Listen to this
I wanna
idea.
know.
Get a cooler. You pour in the cooler with boiling hot water. Put all the corn on the cob into the cooler with butter,
It cleans
salt.
cooler.
Close the cooler.
With butter and salt in there
Butter
already?
and salt, hot water, salt, butter, the corn in a clean cooler, of course. Close the lid for 30 minutes, and the corn on the cob is done. And you
Stop
pull
it.
it out.
No.
Come on.
How
It's
the
right
water has
there.
to be hot.
boiling.
Okay, boiling water. That
Boiling
makes sense.
water in the cooler with all the corn.
Well, I
on the
have
Because
cob.
I do it in the
I also
microwave
have-
normally,
me too, I
wrapped
love
in
it.
wrapped in paper towel.
I don't even do that.
Oh,
I leave it in the husk.
Really?
You nuke each husk for 4 minutes,
But see how time consuming.
I know. All right,
Throw
I'm
it all
doing
in
the best
there.
I
This
can.
is great.
And then you just cut the end and you pop it out. It doesn't even have the little
No,
hairs
I
on it.
love corn on the cob.
Me
This is
too.
good.
I do too.
I mean, this is an easy way.
Man,
I like this.
People
This
can just
is
get
good.
it out of the cooler when you're done.
So
Exactly.
boy,
You
take
have
it
your
yourself. I'm like,
beers next to
I
that
like
one, your
that.
wine cooler and your
no, and I
corn.
like that the butter and salt are already done.
Already in there.
Yeah, that sounds
I'm
good.
impressed.
I think it's
That was
nice.
a very
Might
good
be
help.
worth a try.
And I'm going to give you my recipe for appetizer.
Okay.
It's
go
really simple. Buy asparagus. I prefer to buy the asparagus that's in the bag already, and all you have to do is nuke it for 3 minutes because I'm time consuming, a lot of cooking going on. But if you want, you can do it the old-fashioned way and blanch them. I blanch them in a pan with water, and then you take them out, let them cool. Then you take prosciutto, which is Italian ham, and for those in our audience who don't use ham, this is not the recipe for you.
You can't substitute with tofu.
Yeah, because it's got to roll. So you take one asparagus and you take a small piece of prosciutto. On the prosciutto, you put some goat cheese, you spread it, and then you wrap the prosciutto in it, and you tie it with the long chive, and you lay them out on a table, and
My
everybody has.
sister-in-law Lisa, if you're watching, she always did that.
I love asparagus.
Very
and
good.
it's
Sounds
so
good. I haven't
yummy.
It's
eaten
really
dinner.
good.
You're making me hungry.
All right,
It's
come
really
I got a
good.
pulled pork
Oh,
in the
Maritza
crock pot.
Block. Hi, Maritza.
Hi,
She's on. Love the corn on
She
the
likes
cob. I
them.
do. She's another great cook.
Love the
You know what I've
backdrop.
also heard, and this isn't really Thanksgiving, but doing your lobster in the dishwasher. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
I would not be doing
I-
And
that.
potatoes you can do
That
too, but I
is
just
I had never
really
heard of that
That
before.
skeeves me
disgusting.
Well,
out.
what I mean, how does it smell later? I mean, that's what the trash. You can
me
take the
out.
When
trash
you
out.
have people who don't wash their
Wash the
dishes,
dishes,
before, and you
have
got all that.
old food
No,
in
thanks.
there.
Well, no. Well, I think you take the dirty dishes out, and you
No,
you,
but
it's,
people
you just stick the
rinse
lobster in
them.
on
Rinse
its
it.
own.
It's the
People
rinse
don't-
cycle,
I will
but there's
not be
remnants
putting-
of previous.
I know, and soap in
That
there.
cannot be good.
You know what?
No,
I don't know. Maybe somebody can
A
try
lot
and
of
tell
people
us.
say they do it. They put the potatoes in there and they do it.
Huh.
Well, you know what? I'm not doing that.
I'm not trying that one. If you try it, let us know how it came
Yeah.
out.
I'll see you in the ER.
And my final hack, because I said I had
Yes,
two,
you have
is
two hacks.
delegate. It's the holidays. Tell people, can you bring a fruit platter? Can you bring wine? Can you bring, that helps. It doesn't mean because you have the dinner at your house you have to do everything. Don't be a martyr.
Yeah, you're right.
If martyrdom was a good job, they'd still be alive.
Don't be like
Anyway, I have my fun fact about Boca
Okay.
Raton. Did you know this? Boca Raton Airport is the most privately owned and busiest in the country. Did you know that?
Oh.
I had no idea myself. However, Boca Raton Airport was previously made and used for World War II bomber planes.
Wow.
I had no idea.
And,
So-
and I have another
impressive.
fun fact
Tell me.
because I actually I'm a pilot. I have a small plane,
No
and
way.
they're putting in
nice.
customs next year. So for
Yes.
people, it's
heard
right
that.
now. I have a little place in the Bahamas, and I have to fly. I keep it in Pompano, so I have to fly to Fort Lauderdale Executive. And then I come over to Pompano.
Oh my
But
God.
now you can just go right
Boom,
to
right in
Boca,
Boca.
and it's probably going to get busier.
I
mean,
think
for
they should
people that live in
open
the
it
area.
up and just go crazy and make it like a little international.
I heard about
airport.
that
I guess
custom, so
so.
it's going to be great.
I know
That's
it's gonna be
be
great.
huge for the city.
For people,
Yeah.
so all your viewers that have your jets.
Yes.
And by the way,
then-
I don't have a jet. I have a small single-engine plane, so I mean,
which I
nothing
don't
that
approve of.
fancy.
See,
might
get
I
your
say.
finances in order. This is your dream goal here,
There you
right?
go. He's getting better looking as the minutes pass.
All right, before Amy drools all over, we're going to wrap it up, Amy.
We are going to wrap it up, and we will see you next week. And guess who we're going to have on next week? We're going to have James Brand, who is the owner and teacher extraordinaire of Fred Astaire Dance Studios. And we're going to talk about dancing and how it's good for you and perhaps a Christmas gift option and a little romantic thing going on there, too. So that's who's going to be on next week.
We wish you a very, very happy Thanksgiving.
We do. Too happy.
You and your loved ones.
Healthy, too.
Thank
Most
you so
important.
much, Tyler.
yeah, thank you. It's been fun.
We're going to have you back because we need more info.
For the new year, we're going to have a new year, new you plan. We're going to have a lot of things coming on for the new year. But thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week, when she will be a year older next week. And
Thank
I
you
will
for pointing that out.
I had to.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you for joining the Two Broads from Boca. You can see us live every Monday at 7 p.m. on Facebook. See you next week, and remember, keep it classy, sassy, and a little smartassy.